specializes in helping people design their lives. He is the president of Work-Life Playground Consulting, a firm that is dedicated to helping companies discover the fit, flex, and fun in the workplace. This April, Paul's first book, entitled The 2-Year-Old's Guide to Work-Life Balance, is set to be released. Paul is finishing his PhD in his free time in education with an emphasis of human resource management from MSC, Go Green. His research revolves around workplace flexibility and the impact it has on job satisfaction and intention to stay. As an accomplished speaker, Paul also gives motivational talks based on how he overcame physical challenges to achieve his dream of playing college football. In 2013, he was a semifinalist, top 89 out of 25,000 contestants at Toastmasters World Championships of Public Speaking. I'm really setting you up for a big job here today with that. Paul has used today's lessons to help others make positive career transitions, improve workplace cultures, and most importantly, bring peace to his life. When he is not speaking, you will find Paul spending time with his loud but lovable Italian family. And in regard to the topic today, what is getting in your way of creating a positive work-life balance? The reason we thought of this today is because Melissa brought it up at a meet and we thought, oh, we have the perfect speaker. And Paul today believes that finding work-life balance is possible and within your grasp. All you need to do are 3 things: understand it, design it, and fight for it. During today's talk, Paul will focus on understanding this work-life blueprint. Today you will learn 2 primary concepts. 1, the best definition of work-life balance, and 2 key strategies to help move you along on your work-life journey. Please help me in welcoming Paul Artale. Thank you so much.
I'm good. I don't need the mic. What do you want to be when you grow up? You remember that question? You remember how you used to answer that question? Well, tell me, how'd you used to answer it? Shout it out.
Vet.
A vet, good. Teacher. Fireman. Ballerina in space. I love that, all right? Think big. Who had an unrealistic, big, hairy, audacious baseball player? I can remember the first time I heard that question as a child. It was with my big, loud, crazy, but lovable Italian family. We were at a family reunion. It was me and my cousin Sal, and we were 5 years old, sitting in my grandmother's driveway, eating a fudgesicle. Well, my Aunt Laura came out to us, and she told us we were cute, and she was right. And then she asked us, Paul, Sal, what do you want to be when you grow up? Sal didn't flinch. He had the perfect answer. I'm going to be an accountant. My answer was even better. I'm going to be Hulk Hogan's tag team partner, and together we're going to win WrestleMania. It's a dream I still hold on to. When we're children, we're asked that question and we answer it any way we want. We can be what we want. We can go where we want to go. We can have any occupation that we choose. But as we get older, that question goes away and it's replaced with another one. Anyone want to guess what that question is? When are you going to grow up? It's like a conversation with my father last night. What do you do? And when you go from childhood to high school, early college, age 19, 20, what are you going to do becomes the question, right? And if you're with me and my cousin Sal 15 years later, I grew up in Canada, so we would mull over these questions in the most sacred and beautiful of Canadian places, the Tim Hortons coffee shop. And we would ask each other this exact same questions, and we would spend so much time focusing on it. Now, by the time we were in our early 20s, Sal had evolved. He now wanted to be a financial analyst. I had not given up my dreams of being a wrestling superstar, but I also found a love for writing plays. I was going to be the next Canadian William Shakespeare. And then I actually read one of my plays. And I realized maybe high school teacher is just a better fit for me. And both of us over the next 10 years really evolved into our jobs. We got into the grind. You get out of college, you get a job, you go into the grind, you just put your time and effort into whatever it is you're going to do. I changed. I went from being a high school teacher to a college football coach to being a trainer of college students. And after that 10 years, I was now starting my PhD at Michigan State, go green, researching work-life balance, and I had started my career as a keynote speaker, as a motivational speaker, and I was really happy. Sal, he had now made junior partner at a multinational investment firm where he specialized in essentially cybersecurity. He was making sure big financial companies don't get hacked. Equifax could use him right now, right? But that 10 years later, we had not fallen out of touch, but I had moved from Canada down to the United States, and we hadn't talked it much. And the only time we would really get to converse with each other was at big, loud family reunions. Now, one particular family reunion stands out in my mind. It was one where my son Alessio, my firstborn, he was born into the world. And we decided that because we never see the family, that we were going to bring him up and, in the spirit of the Lion King, present him to everybody, right? Except instead of the Lion King theme, we went with Hawaiian, and it was November. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but I just wanted to wear the shirt, I'm not going to lie. We're 2 hours into this reunion. I'm hearing a lot of, the mundane talk that goes on at a lot of family reunions. How are you doing? What do you do for a living? No one ever actually remembers any of your answers, but you answer the questions anyway. After a while, Sal pulls me aside, hey, let's go to the parking lot, let's talk. So we're sitting in his car, and we're reflecting on our lives and where they're gone. And I say to Sal, I said, man, you've done well for yourself. You had, from an early age, knew what your goal was going to be, and you went up and you slowly climbed that ladder. You've got the dream. You got the great job. He's got a lovely wife. He had 2 children at the time. He has a beautiful house. He has a Great Dane, which is basically like owning a small horse. You got it made. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he says to me, yeah, I'm doing okay. But you know what? I don't talk to anybody anymore. I entered this career okay with the long and grueling hours. I made peace with that. But I didn't anticipate that I wouldn't get to talk to my friends. I wouldn't see my family. My wife is the only one who updates me. If I didn't have her, I wouldn't know what's going on in anybody's life. Paul, you're the expert. What do you think I should do? You ever been blindsided by a question you didn't know the answer to? I'm not going to lie, I liked being called an expert. It felt kind of cool. The advice part, especially as someone that you know and care and love, a little bit harder. I had to dig deep. And finally I said to him, Sal, what do you want your life to look like? How does family and friends play into that? I can't give you a prescription, but I can give you this question as a guidepost. If you want more time with friends, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about that? If you want to not receive updates via your wife right before you go to bed, what are you going to do to make sure you can keep in touch with people? And he hates Facebook, so I'm like, why aren't you on Facebook? At least you can get a status update. But when we're talking about work-life balance, when we're talking about how to move forward, the work-life blueprint, really it focuses on understanding and answering that question, what is it you want your life to look like? Because if you don't know that, you can't design anything around it. And that's the problem with the questions we're asked as children, or not, and more as adults. What are you going to do? What do you do for a living? What's your next job requirement? What's your next job you're going to ascend to? Those are all great questions, but they don't answer the work-life piece. They're just checkpoints on a professional journey. They exclude all the other elements that make our lives up. Our family, our hobbies, our health, our wellness, our other dreams that maybe we don't want to quit our job and do, but maybe you like to crochet and you'd like to do that more, go to a fair and sell your goods, whatever it is, it doesn't account for it. So, what do you want your life to look like? In front of you, you've got a worksheet. We're going to work through. It looks a little something like this. And I just want you to write down that question. It's under question 1. Answer the key question. What do you want your life to look like? Take a minute. Reflect. And we'll come back. 20 more seconds to sample the life you want. One of the great things about being a work-life researcher is that when I tell people I am a work-life researcher, I am met with 3 distinct responses. The first one, uncontrollable laughter. The second one, there's no such thing as work-life balance, and that person walks away very angrily. And the third one, the most common one, is I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life, and then they add some other descriptor. Work-life optimization, work-life joy, work-life maximization. Everyone invents their own term, and I'm supposed to agree with it. But here's the truth about work-life balance. I acknowledge it is not the greatest term, but it is the term we use. Because if I came up to you and said, hey, I do work-life optimization, what's your response probably going to be? Yeah, what the heck's that, right? I say work-life balance, you know what I'm talking about. It's not the most perfect term, but getting at what we want to learn. But let's just for a second, to really understand what it really is, let's just delete that word from our memory. Pretend it was never invented in the 70s or the 80s when it came out, and think about what is one word you would use to describe work-life balance. Shout it out.
Balance.
Okay, balance. Healthy. Stress-free, good. Ideal. Well-rounded. Calming. Great. Those are all great answers. I'm going to give you my answer. When it comes to work-life balance, I want you to think about one word. Harmony. That's all it is. That's all it's trying to say. All it's saying is that you got a work domain, you got a personal domain, and you want them to come together. Right? You want them in whatever form, whatever shape, whatever formula works for you, you want them to come together and work, right? You don't want them to combat each other. They keep running into each other, you get enough friction, eventually what happens? Paul gets bloody knuckles, he keeps doing it, right? You want that harmony. Every other term is just a distraction to what really we're trying to get at. And that distraction comes partially because of an image like this. You see work-life balance, you often see this scale. And what's the problem with this scale? Not the scale itself, but the image of a scale.
Not even.
It's not, okay, this one particularly is not even, yes. What does the word balance often imply? They're equal, that it's 50-50, right? Works here, balances here. And that goes beyond the scale image. It goes back to the Industrial Revolution when we were setting our 9 to 5 work hours, right? The mantra was 8 hours for work, 8 hours for play, 8 hours for rest. Well, those 8 hours didn't include my commute. They didn't include the laundry, the dishes. I can't sleep because maybe I'm stressed at night. It didn't include a lot of different elements. So the word balance already throws us off. And as a researcher, I often think about how can I find an image? How can I find a way of explaining work-life beyond just one word? A graphic that would best describe what I'm trying to get at. And I found my answer at Bed Bath & Beyond. Has anyone here ever registered for a wedding, right? Okay, so we have a few people in the room. I thought when I got married, I thought this is going to be a piece of cake, right? In particular, over the china. My wife Sherry was like, hey, we got to go pick out some plates. And I thought, white round, we're done, right? Yeah, I learned there's more than white round plates at Bed Bath & Beyond. But when I thought about it, I like the image of a plate for describing how we manage our work-life balance. Now, plates come in all different shapes and sizes, right? We got the round one, obviously my favorite. Got a little square action. This one's a little trendier. It's got like those rounded edges so you can't like gouge yourself with them. You got the triangle plate. This one's an octagon with a design of some sort, okay? You can pick the design. And some plates have compartments. Some plates have a lot of compartments. And for those of us who like compartments, we would prefer if the food fit in there nice and easy and smoothly, right? And for some of us, who cares about compartments? Give me my fried rice, my chicken, throw the egg roll on it when you're ready, okay? We don't care. And there's nothing wrong with either plate. There's nothing wrong with either design. The problem is, when you want your life to look like that, and you're in a work environment that does this to you, right? Or if you like order, and you like having things segmented, and you're in a situation that demands you do this. That's where the stress comes in. So when we're looking at an image to represent work-life balance and to define it, I like the plate, because the shape and the size of the plate really is based on our backgrounds, our values, our experiences. That will craft what we want our plate to look like. The internal piece are those borders, right? Do we have compartments? How many compartments do we have, and how do we use them? So 50-50, not the definition we want. It's a plate. It's about how do we want our life to look like, and how do we integrate it. And to help you with that, there is a tool out there. Now raise your hand if you've done an evaluation like leadership tests, like Myers-Briggs, DISC, right? What are some of the other ones that are out there? True Colors is out there. That's pretty popular. Well, there's an actual assessment for understanding what your flex style is, how you conceptualize work and life. And I'm going to give you a really shortened version with the time we have here today. There are 3 distinct flex styles in the workplace. All right, and the first one, and this is on your sheet, so you can see the notes I've already put in there, are separators. And this one is pretty self-explanatory, right? Separators like to separate their work domains. They like a distinct area for every part of their life. If you're a separator, you're usually your passion comes from the cues, right? You have different cues. So home is obviously a physical cue, right? If I'm home, this is my family time, I'm going to be home. My car, that could be another cue. Maybe it's my time for relaxation. Maybe it's a time where I'm going to catch up on a podcast. But it's a very specific time. When I'm in the car and I'm at work, obviously it's work. There's different cues that we have with separators, right? Separators don't like their boundaries to be crossed. I have a friend who was a high separator. One day her boss called her at home at 9 p.m. and then asked her if to pick up the dry cleaning the next day. Now, there's 2 things wrong with that. Number 1, get your own dry cleaning. That's not actually part of the job description. But number 2, that it wasn't work unless it's an emergency, which that clearly wasn't. Don't call me at home. I need to protect my boundaries, right? And so separators really believe in protecting those boundaries. Our second kind, integrators. Integrators are the complete opposite of separators, right? They are your fried chicken and rice on a plate people, right? What is important to an integrator is that they like the freedom to shift from personal to professional whenever they can. There is no 9 to 5 and then I'm home. They don't care. A high integrator doesn't care if they have to answer a work email at the table while they're eating dinner with the family, right? Likewise, an integrator expects that if they're at the office and they get a call from family or they have a call for something else going on in their personal life, that they're able to tend to it. Sometimes maybe even leave work early for it or adjust their schedule around it, right? It's about everything blends together. The best image for the integrator is the smartphone, right? Integrators love the smartphone. Separators, and I'm one, have trouble with the smartphone. Who do I give my phone number to? What apps do I put on my phone, right? What are my rules around texting and emails at night? All these things can really stress a separator out. An integrator, probably not going to care for the most part. It's all just part of the game. It's all part of this balance that they find a way whenever it fits them to make it work. There was an interesting study done in the 70s. This is when the idea, what I'm talking about largely is something called boundary control. And the study just analyzed how people sorted their keys. And they found that integrators had their work keys and their home keys and the keys to their lawnmower, all of that, all on one key ring. That was the tendency. Separators had a separate key ring for every different aspect of their life. I see some people laughing and nodding right now. So you know who you are already, right? I'm a separator, right? I will walk through the house or I will walk to work with my work keys clipped here, my car keys here, and sometimes a separate key ring just for my house keys. That's just who I am. I just like things separated. And that's nothing wrong with that. And so when you think about those 2, they're often at odds. But there is a third type in here. the volunteer. And the volunteer actually integrates both, right? Whereas the integrator wants to be able to shift from work to personal life all the time with ease. The volunteer wants to be able to shift from being a separator to an integrator with ease, meaning that they're okay with certain times a year being highly focused on work or encroaching on their family rules. That's okay to them. But they also have a lot of rules and structured around it. I'll give you a quick example. Back when I was working in one of my first jobs in university administration was working in the residence halls. I was a dorm manager, right? And so I knew that in August, when people were moving in, I would not have a lot of family time. And I was actually okay with that because that is what I needed to do to get the job done. I also knew that 3 weeks after move-in, after students have moved in, some have left, roommate disputes, all that kind of fun stuff, parents calling me up, right? The shower's not clean, we cleaned it. And after all that, I will personally go clean it. I did not do that. But after those 3 weeks, I also knew there was a lull, so I could take some time, right? I can take some comp time. I could go and do as I please within reason. I also knew that late November, early December was busy. Students had exams, they were moving out. We needed to have a lot of coverage. But I also knew that from about December 10th to January 1st, I had all the time in the world to do as I needed. I could take vacation, I could just refresh myself, and that was okay. And for most of my years working, I spent 5 years working in college housing. 4 of those years I could do as I pleased because the shifter, the volunteer part of me liked it. But in my last year, I remember that they started putting rules on that, right? It's like, oh, you need to take you worked late last night, so you need to take your comp time within 24 hours. Well, that's not going to work because I'm on duty to 3 a.m. Like that's just what, and in that case, I live where I work. So there's this shifting, I'm not able to shift the way I want. But so know that volunteers like the shifting. They know that there's certain times a year, certain times a day where they want to either be family focused or work focused, and they will put, like I said, rules around that. So a volunteer may choose to work from home and have a home office and receive calls at home, but they may put rules on their family and when they can actually come talk to them, right? I have a domain and, or what the rules are, right? They're going to set up their parameters, whereas integrator, I don't care, just come find me, right? Separator, hard rules, like I'm not even going to do work from home, that's just not what I do. So those are your 3 styles: integrators, volunteers, separators. On your sheet, I want you to circle which one you think you are. There is a little bit more of an advanced assessment I do with groups in longer formats, but this is always a good way to start it off. Which one do you think you are? And when you got that, I want you to think about this question. Does your current work environment, does your current situation allow you to use that flex style to its maximum potential? So if you want to be if you like being an integrator, are you in an integrative job, and so on. Take 1 minute and reflect on that. We're going to move on in about 30 seconds. Just by a show of hands, raise your hand if you identify as an integrator. Okay. Separators? Volunteers. And that is typically the spread that is out there. Now, I have a theory, and research backs this up. Why do you think there are more? Every time I do a workshop like this, there's always a few separators, couple more integrators and a heck of a lot of volleyers. Why do you think that is? What's that?
Because we're thinking about it.
Because you're always thinking about work and how to juggle it. Okay.
Well, it's hard to pick one. You don't want to be defined as completely one or the other, and it's easier to be more in the middle.
Okay. So yeah, if you don't want to pick one, you're definitely a volleyer. Are there any, what societal changes, if I had done this test in, say, the 1960s, yeah, right?
Email and
Yeah, just digital technology is changing our concept of work and life, right? Being in a brick and mortar establishment, if you're especially in an office job, is not necessary to completing the task anymore. Now, there are other dynamics that go with that. There are the dynamics of working in a team, working in an office environment. There's the ability to be accessible. There's all these caveats that come to not necessarily working in a single space. But generally speaking, most of us that work in an office environment have some level of autonomy that we could do this job in another venue, whether it's at our office, whether it's at our home, even just another room in the building, right? And that's actually starting to trickle down to other industries. I worked at a campus once where they opened a new bank in our university center. I thought, this is great, because, and I used to always say, oh, if you're a bank teller, there's no way you can't really telecommute. You need to be there on site. And so I visit this bank branch for the first time, and I walk in, and there's nobody there. There's just 4 iPads in a kiosk. And I was like, okay, so I clicked on the button. All of a sudden, on the other end, the iPad turns on, and someone, a teller pops up, like, hi, can I help you? And starts talking to me, and he's in the Ann Arbor branch. And we conducted a transaction. And that really started to change my perception of work is changing. How we conceptualize work is constantly changing. It will consistently change. And that we're going to go through these ebbs and flows. So it just makes sense that it's not that you're better off as a volleyer, but it just makes sense that more people are finding it the best way to do work or just predisposed to it. All right, before I move forward with my second technique, you'll see on your table there's also a testimonial form. So if you enjoyed this presentation, you want to leave me a few kind words, I always appreciate that from my audiences. Also, there's a bunch of check boxes. Check off whatever you need. I do a monthly work-life balance newsletter. I provide a couple of blogs that I do and any other cool resources that I provide. And starting in the new year, I'm actually going to provide a 10 to 15-minute webinar on a topic that my audience, that my subscriber base chooses. I'm looking at launching a podcast in January as well. I've already started conducting interviews for that. And I've got a book coming out in April called The 2-Year-Old's Guide to Work-Life Balance, 9 simple rules that my 2-year-old son taught me about work-life balance. If you're interested in that or anything else, check off the boxes, no obligation. And if you are extra spirited, if you want to leave me a video testimonial after this, I will give you a free download of my motivational keynote, Hit Hard, which the audio product is actually coming out next week. And I'll give you a free one if you give me 30 seconds of video time. We'll make that work. Okay, here's the second piece I want to talk about when we're talking about work-life balance and understanding who we are and how we're going to integrate. And that is values. Values are a set of beliefs that guide how we act, or it should be, right? What are some things we value in our lives? What are values? Like, what are some values? Shout them out. Honesty. Family, I heard family, good.
work ethic.
Work ethic, good.
Friendships.
Friendship. Health. Security. Loyalty. Integrity. I think for me, one of them is lightheartedness. I value just an environment where I can be funny and I can be me. Honest ties into honesty. Values are important because we talked about, the plate is shaped. The shape of the plate is partially informed by our values and who we are. And quite often when we're going through our work-life journey, we sometimes lose sight of those values. And so on your sheet, I want you to, you see 10 bullet points on your sheet. I want you to just quickly write down at least 5. I gave you 10 slots, but I want you to write at least 5 values down that are important to you. Give me 5 values that are important to you. I'll give you 1 minute. Fine, usually people get to 6 or 7, no problem, and then they start digging. No, 10 seconds. So you have your values. I know some are still working. We're going to move forward just a little bit here. You have your values. Your core values probably came to you really easy, right? Or the ones that, all right? I want you to take that list. Anyone get to 10? 7? No, you don't have to get to 10. I'm just curious. This is just for my own. I'm a researcher. I like to collect data, right?
I got to 8.
You got to 8. Okay. I want everyone to I want you to take those values, and I'm now going to ask you to essentially put some of those values in the shredder, right? So I want you to take yourself down. I want you to cross off. I want you to get to 4 values, all right? So cross off. So if you have 6, you're crossing off 2. If you have 8, you're crossing off 4, right? If you have 4, good. Just sit and wait for instructions. So you're gonna start trashing your values. Cross them off the list.
We don't need that. We need the dogs.
Okay. I think most of us, are most of us down to 4? Yes? All right. Cross off 2 more. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is like Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm the game master, which reveals how much of a nerd I really am, okay? You want to go down to 2 now. You're going to cross off 2 more, so you should be left with 2 values on your list. Is passive resistance one of your values? Then that should be number 1.
Crazy?
No.
Oh.
It's a passive resistance.
That should be.
Okay, I think most of us know where I'm going with this. If you don't like the act of crossing off because it is too aggressive, you may either cross off 1 more value, or you may circle your top value, whichever you want. Okay?
This is very stressful.
We will have a debrief afterward. We go, okay. I don't mean for this to be stressful. All right. Do we all have our 1 value? All right. I want you to turn to someone at your table and say, my number 1 value is, and go.
What is it? I feel like you're authentic. I don't know if that's really a value, but
All right. We have our number 1 value. Let me ask you about that exercise quickly. What was difficult about that exercise?
picking a top one.
Picking a choice. Did it get tougher as I kept asking you to scratch values off the list? Okay. Why in general? Why I know it's difficult, but what specifically about that is difficult? Do you have to choose one or the other?
I didn't want to let one go.
Okay, you didn't want to let one go? So you felt a little conflict, right? Less harmony, more conflict, right? They were both important? Good. It's like wearing one shoe.
Which Brenda does sometimes.
Well, let me ask you this then. Have you ever had a situation in your work life where you said you valued something, but you crossed it off the list? Happens a lot more than we think, doesn't it?
What was the question?
Have you ever been in a situation in your work life where you said you valued something, but didn't come through? So you basically crossed it off your own list. See, values are important. I can talk to you about flex styles, and I can talk to you about how to define borders, and I can do a whole workshop on different work arrangements and how to negotiate your job offer. I love doing that stuff. But until we know what our values are, you're kind of lost, because you can't inform your practice until you have a value set and stick to the value set. If the opening question is, what do you want your life to look like, is going to take you to the destination, the values are the roadmap to get to that destination. They're the guideposts. They're the compass that when we go off course, they're going to bring us back to center. And to close, I want to leave you with a story about values. A story that my 2-year-old son taught me. Now, my son Alessio, when he was 2, was the most popular man in our house. He rode with an entourage. Specifically 3 stuffed animals that were his crew. They were his peeps, right? He had first, the head of the crew, a brown, raggedy, but lovable bear that he called Bear. And Bear's right-hand man was a very plush and beautiful and soft panda that he called Panda. And rounding out the trio was a butterscotch and white little puppy dog that he named, anyone want to guess? No, he called him Hurley. I don't know how he names his animals. One day, a 4th character entered the mix. Ladies and gentlemen, enter the yak. Now, yak was different because yak wasn't a stuffed animal. He was imaginary. And when you think yak, you think big and smelly. Yak was small. He fit in the palm of Alessio's hand. And for a month, yak was the MVP of the house. I would go downstairs for dinner, and I'd go to sit down, and Alessio would be like, "No, Daddy, that's the yak's chair." And so I would have to sit and eat my dinner on the floor. Then one day I'm walking by his bedroom, and I hear, "No, yak. Don't bite. Not nice. Please stop. No, yak. Don't steal. That's Bear's cupcake." And then one day, there was no yak. I got curious. I said, "Alessio, what happened to yak?" "Yak no good, Daddy. I tell him go bye-bye." And just like that, my son taught me a really important lesson. You see, my son knew what his values were. He knew what he wanted his life to look like. And I have no idea why his imaginary friend turned out to be a jerk. But his idea was so strong that he stuck to his principles when they were challenged. What are the yaks in your life? Who are you letting compromise your values? I started this presentation with the simple question, what do you want your life to look like? If you look down at your paper, I want you to think about, is that close to the life you're living now? Because if it's not, you have to make a change. It can be a small change, but it's necessary. Necessary if we want to go from conflict to harmony. Necessary if we want to have a better work-life balance. And I know it seems difficult, but actually it's quite easy. It's so easy, a 2-year-old can do it. Enjoy the rest of your day.